Hello, my name is Sebastian Fernandez, and today I'll be covering the topic of Unit 3, Lesson 3, or in other words, how did the framers resolve the conflict between northern and southern states? The vocabulary for this lesson is Fugitive Slave Clause, Tariffs, and the 3/5 Clause. Let's start by the definitions. A tariff is a tax on any goods from foreign products, like a country from England. The 3/5 clause is basically that any slave that a person owns is worth 3/5 of a person. And the fugitive slave clause is if, let's say, a slave escapes from captivity, if they end up in a state that doesn't support slavery, they will be brought back to captivity. How did these economies work? The southern economy was run on agriculture. Products included indigo, cotton, and tobacco. But why the slaves? Slaves were used to grow these crops and also made the products more profitable in the end. Slaves were a big problem and one of the main disagreements between the North and the South. The slaves were treated as property and sold for a certain price. In the end, the South was run on this, only meaning its economy really depended on slavery. But why have to run on this form of abuse? Not only did it run 75% of the cotton in the world, so if Confederacy was a country, it would have been the fourth most profitable in the entire world. But this economy in the end was driven on this and only and nothing else. What was the northern economy like? The northern economy was much more diverse and fluid than the South. They didn't really rely on slavery, so their economy was more humane. The economy was made up of trading and tariffs. Really, this economy was better. The concept was that people would rather buy products from their own country rather than a foreign one, so trade was regulated. North didn't really rely on agriculture as they had other ways. Why did the conflict happen in the first place? The conflict started at the Philadelphia Convention, where the framers disagreed about many things. But a particular thing they disagreed about was the issue on tariffs. It's basically like a tax on goods from other countries, like products that are brought in from our countries, but they sell them here. And it's to protect the local businesses from basically them not earning enough money because of those products. The North believed that tariffs were necessary, but the South didn't. They believed that tariffs weren't necessary at all, and that they would actually cause harm instead of any good. But tariffs was not the only thing that was in conflict. There was also slavery as well. It was basically ingrained in the American culture. Because when the settlers got here, slavery was what was used for agriculture, farming, anything basically. The North had stopped the practice, but the South hadn't. It wasn't humane, and it was a very bad way of generating a good economy. The South still depended on slavery because it was what run the economy, and they had no other way to run the economy. And they refused to be a part of the nation. So there was a conflict. Split up the country or end. The debate was long, but the framers eventually reached a compromise. The Constitution gave power to the Congress to place tariffs on imports. They could also control trade as well. But they had to make a deal with the South so that they would agree. Because if not, there could possibly be a war. The agreements were, before 1808, slavery would not end.
On the table. A petition from a Quaker delegation in Philadelphia calling on Congress to end the African slave trade and abolish slavery in all its forms. This petition was written and signed by Benjamin Franklin. It cannot go ignored. If this comes to a vote in Congress, what is the White House's position? Secretary Jefferson, you first. Tread lightly. Sir. The Constitution clearly states that the states have to wait until 1808 to debate on whether to end the slave trade. And whether or not you want it, guys, that is the final compromise we made. Sir, wait. But for a second, let us say that we can legislate unanimous emancipation. Freedom reigns, and yes, it's great. We cannot cure prejudice or righteous desperate hate. So back to Africa, or do they get a separate state? In 1784, I tried to float, banning slavery in the West. My notion didn't get a single vote. Slavery's a sin, it's growing like a cancer. But we can't address a question if we do not have an answer. Is it my turn? Good. Plantation states are packed with promise makers. Do you realize the precious time these legislators wasted? Institutionalizing slavery only multiplies our troubles. Wait till the 1800s and the population doubles. You all know this is a stain on our soul. In democracy, a land of the free. No, it's not. It's hypocrisy to subjugate, to humanize a race. Call them property and say that we are powerless to stop it. You not foresee? Sir, even you have hundreds of slaves whose descendants will curse our names when we're safe in our graves. How will the South find labor for its businesses? How will Thomas Jefferson find his next mistresses? Still, people follow like lemmings, all your hemming and hawing. Enough. Well, you asked how I feel. I don't pretend to know the answer, but the question is real. If I may, Mr. President Madison, let's take this moment to establish a precedent. First of all, sir, we won't involve you in this. Imagine this debate with all of Congress is ruinous. I'll reassure the South 1808 is still the year that was agreed upon. That buys us time and assuages fear. I'll tell the North that on January 1st of that year we'll ban importation handling the worst. Once I get all this agreed upon, I'll pick up a pen and introduce a motion never to discuss this again.
Mr. President
Hamilton, if we support emancipation, every single slave owner will demand compensation. And as for slandering Jefferson with talk of mistresses, do you really wanna have that conversation? No. Madison, execute your plan to the letter. Let's hope the next generation thinks of something better.
And the 3/5 clause was included in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. But what was the 3/5 clause? The 3/5 clause was basically that a slave was worth 3/5 of one person. And that's how they would count in any election and anything. The fugitive slave clause was agreed by framers as well. This basically means that if a slave escapes from captivity in a state where slavery is allowed, they will be brought back to captivity, even if they're in a state that slavery is not allowed. This was basically to meet both ends of sides, the North and the South. Because possibly states like North Carolina, Georgia, or South Carolina wouldn't have agreed, and they would have left the Union. Next question. How did the North protect businesses from other constitutions? Like I said before, it's tariffs. Tariffs would make foreign products cost more than American products, so that a person would be more likely to buy a product made from here, so that the economy would do better. How did the economics affect slavery in the South? It affected it because of the South's land and the way of life. This made slavery the best way for profit, because so slavery was used for agriculture, and the slaves would farm, they would cut the crops, they would cook, they would basically provide the slave owner's life. Tariffs have helped craftsmen like Paul Revere. It would have helped craftsmen like Paul Revere because it would allow people to sell more frequently in their own city, because products were raised foreign products were raised in general, allowing them to sell better and make more money. Next question. How would it have hurt the southern farmers? It would have hurt the southern farmers because it would have damaged your economy, because imagine that this is the only source of economy. So imagine that a country's source of economy is tourism, and suddenly all the tourism is gone. There's no more tourism, things gone. What would happen? The economy wouldn't survive at all. That's what would happen. Why did the framers leave the word slavery out of the Constitution? Apparently, they were so disgusted with slavery that they didn't want to mention it in the Constitution. That's why they didn't put it in the Constitution. What were the reasons the framers had for compromising on slavery? Reasons were that if slavery was banned, the Carolinas and Georgia would leave the Union. So there was a compromise. They could ban slave trade, but until 1800. This was later switched to 18. A deal was made that if a slave escaped, they would be exchanged for concessions on shipping and trade. These agreements resulted in the ability of slave owners to chase slaves into states where slavery was not allowed, like the Northwest. The compromise also let the South become more represented in Congress. Out of 16 elections, 12 slave owners became president, but in reality the North was more focused on making sure the new government was secure, so that's why they didn't really, at the beginning, have an issue with slavery, because they need to secure the government first. Next question. What did the southern states think about tariffs? The South believed that they were unconstitutional. Why? It's because they favor one side of the economy instead of the other. This would have hurt them badly. They couldn't sell it as good, and they had to pay for manufactured good instead. That's to compete with other companies by selling at very low prices, when other companies could sell at high prices. How are tariffs used in today's modern society? They are more or less using the same in the modern world. It's basically the same concept of them making prices in other countries more expensive to protect our domestic economy. How would I stop the issue on tariffs and slavery? If it were to me, I would probably do the same thing that happened in real life. Meet both ends in order to satisfy both and avoid a conflict. It's probably the safest way, as if we had only favored the South, the North would have not accepted it, and if we only favored the North, the South would have not accepted it either. Even if the South wasn't right, this is the smartest way to go about the situation in the long run. That off, even after the compromise, the states were still in disagreement. The South still needed slavery, and the North still needed tariffs. I used the websites Investopedia.com, the Constitutional Rights Foundation, and I also used the We the People book. The people in my group are Fiorella Buitrago, Paulette Martinez, Saige Williams, Jasmine Puerta, and me, Sebastian Fernandez. Thanks for watching my video.